Geeky.
Well, hello.
Hey.
We're doing it. We're on camera and everything. This is something that we'd been promising forever.
Yeah.
And it hadn't happened, and I was like, man, we can do this. Like, I've been buying equipment to do this for a long fucking time now.
Right.
Let's just make it happen. So,
No, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. Okay, so this week we're doing a top 5.
Yep.
And so it's funny, I had been thinking about this for a little bit, and I was like, man, I really want to do, I want to have a couple of lists that we keep that are like sacred almost, and we update them annually, and we say, okay, these are the things that if you're into, what we're into, you should probably be paying attention to it.
Absolutely.
Because it's like really cool shit.
Yeah.
Even if it's very old and very out of date.
Most of my list is pretty modern. I'm going to be honest. Like there's classic stuff for sure that is on the list. That's great and worth a read. But honestly, man, comics have evolved so much that the storytelling is just taken more seriously now. I've defended the idea for a long time that comics are literature. That this is something that can be just as compelling as, any good movie you've watched or any good book you've read. Like, and that's literature. For sure.
It's legit comics. That's so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do my top 5, your top 5. And then I think what we should do is we'll post on the website. We'll come up with a top 5 together.
Okay.
And that'll be the
definitive list.
The definitive list, yes. Because I have a feeling we're going to be on different sides of the spectrum here a little bit.
Oh, I have no doubt. Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. So
based on the fact that you used to buy comics from me.
Right,
And I know what your taste is. I think we're going to be on different ends here.
I wrote it down.
Oh, yeah, I got all mine up here.
Oh, you're brilliant. Okay.
I've been thinking about it all day.
All right, so what's your number 5?
My number 5
Yes.
is V for Vendetta.
Oh, my God.
By Alan Moore.
Yeah. So, first of all, I love you. Okay?
Did you put that on your list?
Almost. It was actually almost number 5.
Okay.
I went with Watchmen.
Oh,
by Alan Moore.
Both of Alan Moore stories, yeah.
It's hard not to put him in there.
No, yeah. I mean, Alan Moore, I think, today is kind of a curmudgeon-y, weird guy, but he's definitely one of the auteurs of the comic world.
Well, I don't know if you could do his style of writing today.
I think there are people that have definitely tried to emulate what he does to varying degrees of success. Some people do it very well. Some people do it not so well.
Right.
But I think there are definitely writers who, especially when you're writing about characters that he's written about, that have definitely been influenced by his style, right? So like the current Swamp Thing that's going on is a perfect example. It definitely has the Saga of the Swamp Thing vibe to it. So you can kind of tell they're trying to capture that magic again.
Right.
Now, is it as good? No, but it's still pretty good.
I mean, he was prolific, basically.
Yeah.
Everything that he touched for a period of time is now what you would consider a comic masterpiece.
Yeah. And I think the reason V for Vendetta is on my list at all, right, because it's one of the only 2 older comics that I have on my list, is just because it still resonates today.
It does.
It is a story that is, I think, proven, at least in our era here, to be a timeless tale. The big tagline, the big through line, I think, of the story that really resonates even today is people should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
So I had said that on Who Wears the Pants to Mike one time.
Yeah.
And I don't know how he felt about that, because I'm like, at no point in time should people be afraid of the government unless they're doing something heinous.
Sure.
Totally different.
Yeah. I think from the V for Vendetta standpoint, it's more about there's more of us than there are of them.
Right. Well, and it's just living.
Yeah.
That's all that story is.
Yeah.
I'm going to adjust your mic stand slightly here because it's hard to see you.
Okay. Oh, all right. Yeah.
I just couldn't see eyeballs. It's bumming me out.
Well.
Throwing stuff on the floor.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
This thing? This thing. All right. All right. There we go. You still see me over there, too.
Yes. That was my goal. I wanted to keep seeing you. Okay, so That's bizarre. We both picked him at number 5. So yeah, I did Watchmen.
Watchmen would have been on my list. I'm not going to lie. But I think, and this is probably an unpopular opinion in the comic world, I think Watchmen is a little bit overrated.
Kind of. So Watchmen did it before it was like the cool thing to do.
Sure. I think it's a good story. There's nothing wrong with the story.
Right.
It flows very well. It's a timeless tale, just like V for Vendetta. It just, everyone's, oh, you got to read Watchmen. And I always just feel like you don't have to read Watchmen, right? Like, it's a good history lesson in the comic industry, but if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. And I think it's just never been my thing.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. Number 4.
Number 4 for me is Batman Hush.
Ooh, that is a modern one.
It is, so it's not
relatively
super modern. It's 2008, I believe.
I was going to say, it last 20 years.
Yeah.
I feel like is...
It was, but I think the reason, there's 2 Batman stories on my list. The first one is Batman Hush, really just because it was, first of all, Jim Lee drawing Batman, which is something everybody wanted. Jim Lee had drawn for Marvel for a long time, and when the Image stuff started, he kind of shifted and really was doing stuff with them and working with McFarlane. He was one of those early guys. But I remember when they announced that Jim Lee was going to draw Batman, I mean, the comic industry lost their minds, right? And I think Jim Lee's a great artist. There's no doubt. His stuff's always been a little too clean for me.
Okay.
It's beautiful. There is no doubt. But sometimes it's nice to see the sketch lines and the process of bringing a character to life through art. And so Jim Lee's art is just clean. It's very clean, and it looks beautiful, but it's almost too clean. That's why this is not higher on my list. It's just the art is a little too clean.
Okay.
But the story is great. Because Jim Lee was drawing Batman, he got every character involved. I mean, literally every Batman villain, with the exception of Mr. Freeze, I think is the only one that's not a part of that story. Because Riddler, Joker, Two-Face, Clayface, I mean, every villain. They're all Poison Ivy. They're all part of that story. Catwoman, Harley Quinn.
Hells yeah.
He wanted to draw the characters, so he did. He managed to fit them all into one story, and it didn't feel forced.
Well, and when you're at that point in time, Jim Lee drawing Batman, they're like, what characters do you want to draw?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, no, take all of them.
All of them, yeah.
We've got more if you want them.
Right. And so not only did he manage to fit all of those characters into the story, but they all fit so well within the narrative he'd crafted for them. The roles that they played within the story actually made sense, right? It wasn't just like, oh, he's just drawing him to draw him. No, like he has a role within the story, and it made sense to the narrative. Plus, that's where they really changed the story of Jason Todd, right? Because I don't know if people remember, this has been a long time ago, but the reason Jason Todd died and then came back was because in one of the Crisis stories, Superboy Prime was stuck in the nexus of realities and watching all the realities unfold around him on like screens. And he got really angry and he was trying to get out of there and he started punching reality. I mean, literally, that's what he was punching reality.
Right.
And that sent ripples and shockwaves across the universe, across the multiverse. And one of those shockwaves brought Jason back to life. Now, that was a bad story. That was a bad way. I mean, the story wasn't bad. That was a bad way to bring Jason back to life.
Sure.
So later, it was retconned that he was actually put into a Lazarus pit by Ra's al Ghul, who felt guilty for having a hand in taking one of the Batman's allies because he respects the Batman so much. So they did a Red Hood story called The Lost Days that kind of retconned the whole thing. Jeremy Hahn did the art for that. Beautiful, beautiful art. But so that was kind of the story where, for the first time, we saw canonically how this was affecting the Bat world.
Okay.
And I love Jason. Jason is, I mean, he's not my favorite Robin, but he is a great, tragic character. In fact, higher up on my list is a story that's really just about Jason called Under the Red Hood. That is a brilliant story, but we'll get to that later. But he's just a tragic character. I mean, he's a kid who Batman gave this responsibility to. He saw the rage and the anger that was building up in this kid, and he thought, I need to focus that. And so he did, and then he was surprised when it led to his death, right? Which you shouldn't be. You literally took a troubled child and you gave him weapons and told him he was a superhero. And you didn't expect him to be reckless. I mean, come That was the one time Batman, I think, made a mistake about who he chose.
Fair.
But what it led to was Red Hood, who is a fantastic character and just tragic, and one of those characters that while he still uses his guns and he kills people, Batman's okay with that because he's effective and he really can't stop him.
It's like, you're kind of a cool dude, I guess.
Yeah. And so Hush was kind of the story where Batman found out that Jason was still alive, where Batman found out that, and at the end of that story, Batman didn't even believe that until we got to Under the Red Hood, which came later, because Clayface was like posing as Drake or as Jason during that story. So there was, yes, Jason's back or not. Who knows? Stay tuned. So not only was it a great story in its own right, but it left us wanting more.
I was going to say, they give you a nice cliffhanger there on that.
Yeah.
So I had to put Frank Miller on my list.
Sure.
Okay, and I was
Nothing wrong with Frank Miller.
I was like, man.
I mean, he's not a great artist, but he's a good writer.
I mean, he's got that like dirty art style. I'm surprised you don't like it.
For Dark Knight Returns, if that's what you're discussing here, is Dark Knight Returns the one you're
going
with?
So at first it was a toss up between that and Daredevil Born Again, but yes, I did go Dark Knight Returns.
Okay.
Because the artwork fits it so well.
I think, yes, his art worked well in that era for that story.
Yes.
But later, when he did Dark Knight, The Master Race, the third Dark Knight story, he wasn't doing the art. Andy Kubert was doing the art, and his style worked really well. He tried to mimic Frank Miller's style quite a bit. But Frank Miller was doing little backup stories, and they were terrible. The art was terrible.
Really?
Just was not good.
See, that grizzled Batman that came in that story was fun, and it was good for the time. Very good for the time, and it's getting to one of the things that made me so appreciative of that was getting Affleck's Batman.
Oh, sure. It definitely influenced who he became.
Oh, big time. And I was like, fuck, dude, getting to actually see him, not just in the comic, because the comic was fantastic, but somehow my mind put them together, and I was like, same.
Yeah. Yeah, and The Dark Knight Returns, I think the reason, you mentioned Affleck's Batman, the thing I think that separates them is in The Dark Knight Returns, when Batman was training the army of the Bat, the sons of Batman, I think he called them.
Yeah.
One of the first things he says is he snatches a shotgun out of one of their hands, breaks it over his knee, and says, "This is the weapon of the enemy. We do not need it. We will not use it." So I think that's what separates him.
Oh.
And so the influence is there in the look, but in the way the character's portrayed, they are night and day.
And part of that, I think, is just the writing. Frank Miller was very much a Batman purist.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's wonderful to see.
And Zack Snyder was not.
Right, exactly. In any sense of the word. He was just trying to put his fingerprint on it, I think.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, fucking Batman kills.
I mean, when you look at the movies, he's right? I mean, we literally saw Michael Keaton strap a bomb to a dude's chest and shove him into a hole in the ground and burn a guy alive with the afterburner of the Batmobile. So, yes, in the movies, Batman's a murderer for sure.
If that is your comic know-how,
but if you're trying to capture the comic, you're wrong. Well, Batman is not a murderer.
Well, and that's where you run into the issue. If you're trying to capture the character, because the character is well established.
Yeah.
Well established.
He will not kill you.
No, not his thing. He doesn't even kill the Joker, who's a prick.
Well, and that comes in Under the Red Hood, where he literally says, "Look, you think it would be hard? No, it would be easy. But if I allow myself to go down into that place, I'll never come back."
Right.
Batman's basically saying if he crosses the line, he'll be the most effective serial killer in the world. He knows that.
Right, because he's crazy.
His skill level means he would be the best serial killer. No one that he wanted to die would be alive. Everyone he wanted to die would die.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when you're talking about the guy that has contingency plans for the Justice League.
He's contingency plan for himself. We're actually seeing that play out right now.
It's
a robot he created called Failsafe.
Of course it is.
It's awesome. Chip Zdarsky is currently writing Batman.
He's such a dick.
And it's fantastic, right? He created a robot that is plugged into media feeds so that if there's ever information that the Batman has murdered someone, the failsafe is activated. It's Batman's plan to stop himself.
Oh, well, now
because again, he knows he'd be the most effective serial killer in the world.
Now, this is some huge foreshadowing here because we know that Batman is going to be, framed.
Right.
And the failsafe's going to be activated, and he's going to have to then...
He was.
Okay,
That's
there
how
we go.
The story started.
There we go.
Penguin is dead, and he's made it look like Batman was the one who killed him. Now, in the past, Alfred was there to tell the failsafe system when something was a false flag type thing, when it was somebody trying to frame the Batman. But Alfred ain't there no more. Alfred is dead. So the failsafe system didn't get the message, and it thinks Batman murdered the Penguin.
That's fantastic. Okay, so number 3.
Yes.
Number 3, what have you got?
For me, number 3 is Under the Red Hood.
Under the Red Hood. Okay.
But my 2 Batmans, it's weird that a Batman story is not number 1 for me because it's not a Batman story. My number 1, we'll get to in a little bit, is not a Batman story, but it's Under the Red Hood. Again, I love Jason. I think Jason is a tragic character. He comes back to Gotham as this enigma, this mystery that Batman has to solve. This guy wearing a red hood and murdering villains and mafia guys and basically taking control of the criminal underworld in order to control crime, right? Something that he thinks is the logical next step in what Batman does. And it's brilliant when he calls the heads of the mafia families together and he tosses the duffel bag down and they open it. It's literally the heads of all their lieutenants. And he says, I did that in an hour. Because he's good at this, right? He was trained by the Batman.
Badass, yes.
But it builds to one of the most emotional moments between Jason and Bruce, where he's captured the Joker, he's tortured him, and Batman arrives, and he's trying to force Batman to kill the Joker. And Batman is denying it, not going to do it, and Jason has this tears running down his face moment where he says, look, I'm not talking about killing Penguin or Two-Face or Riddler or Dent, just him. And doing it because he took me away from you. And it's a moment that shows everything Jason is doing is because he loves Batman. Because Bruce is his father.
Right.
Right? And it's such a heartfelt story that is tragic. I mean, he's one of the most tragic characters on the side of good, right? There's the reason Batman is such a resonating story, I think, is because even on the villain side, there are villains that you sympathize with. His villains are tragic. Two-Face. Two-Face could have been the one who ended organized crime in Gotham City, except for that one moment. Mr. Freeze could have been the one who cured a deadly disease that was afflicting his wife until that crossroads moment, right? So I think that's what makes his stories so good is that they're tragic. They really, look, is Jason a cold-blooded killer? Absolutely. But you sympathize with him.
Why?
You understand
exactly
why he's doing what he's doing. And I think that's what makes him such a compelling character. And I think that's what allows Bruce to kind of ignore the things he does. Let him be the guy he is because Bruce failed him. Bruce failed him greatly.
Big time, yeah.
He let him get tortured and murdered by the Joker. Now, arguably, he didn't let that happen, but through his own negligence,
exactly.
It happened. And he blames himself for that. I mean, that's the whole reason Tim Drake became Robin. Because Tim saw in Bruce a person who was untethered from the moral compass. In the aftermath of Jason's death, Bruce was brutal. He was far more brutal than he'd ever been. And Tim saw that and saw that Robin is what balances Batman. So Jason was part of that balance too. In fact, Jason is... Because Dick, look, Hush had a great line about all of these people. Dick saw being Robin as a performance. It's probably why he outgrew it. Jason saw being Robin as a game. It's probably what got him killed. Tim wants to be the greatest detective in the world, and he will be one day. And it's such a beautiful to look at all of these guys who have
carried the
filled
mantle.
The same role in Batman's life and how different all of them have taken it. All of them have looked at it differently. And and Jason, arguably, like I said, Jason I think is the most tragic among them.
Oh, for sure.
And that's why Under the Red Hood is absolutely a story that you should read. Judd Winnick, Doug Bonke, read it. It's brilliant. It's such a good Batman story.
So my number 3 is Scarlet Spider Volume 2 with Kane Parker.
Of course it is.
Of course it is.
Of course it is.
That's a duh. It's so good. That one was by Chris Yost, and Ryan Steegman started off doing the artwork in it, and they kind of shifted artists around and stuff like that with that series. It was, but the series was good, and what I really, really liked about it is, so the whole series is positioning somebody who sees themselves as a monster, and like they're on the run. Then this is Kane Parker. He is a clone of Spider-Man. Oh, no, not the Clone Saga. The Clone Saga. And he is on the run.
You're talking about Aftermath of the Clone Saga, though. That was much better than the Clone Saga.
This is way, way, way after that. Well, and I feel like we've kind of redeemed all the clones at this point in some way because other writers have taken it and unmolested it.
Sure.
So we have Kane. He's on the run because the Jackal wants to get him because he's, the first failed experiment, but he's a super badass, and he is given by Peter Parker Spider-Man's stealth suit on Spider Island. So he's kind of using that to maintain a low profile, and he ends up in Houston, and he fucking saves some people. And they're like, oh, you're a hero. And he's like, I'm not a hero. Not a hero.
Right.
And like his whole story is being in denial of being a hero, but he starts making all these friends, and like he befriends a cop, and he's like, he'll help this cop randomly. Right. He's just got all these people, and they see him being a hero, and it's like, dude, at some point you have to give up on this past years where you were made to be something else because you get to make your own destiny. I think that's the thing about that story that's so cool. And then they transition that into the Spider-Verse thing, and he's the Scion. He's the freaking sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like, it was totally badass, and how they did his character, I was like, man,
plus, he had a really good costume.
His costume's bitchin'.
His costume is really good.
It's fucking sick. You were 100% right.
Yeah.
Well, because the stealth suit was cool.
Yeah.
The black and red that they gave him, though, man.
The black and red was so good.
It was so good.
When I was recently replaying the Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man game, I played the whole game in that costume.
Did you?
That costume is brilliant.
It's such a cool costume.
They have both of his costumes in there, but the all red one with the black is much better than the original one.
They did a team up with him in and Superior Spider-Man.
Yep.
And Wolverine at one point. Mm-hmm. And with the Wolverine team up, they put him like in the cover. He's in the regular stealth suit.
Yeah. And
then the comic, it's like, no, don't worry about that. He's not wearing that silly thing. And you're like, thank God he's got the black and red, and it's so cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a suit made so bad that was that suit.
Right.
I love it.
You've definitely got the body type for a Spider-Man costume.
Kane is big, though.
Yeah,
big.
But when I say that, I'm talking about like me versus you, right?
Sure,
I couldn't wear a skin-tight spandex suit. You could.
Right, well, yeah, but like, I'm all about staying true to a character. Like, okay, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine irritated the piss out of me. He's just too big.
Yeah.
He did a good job. He is. He's 6'2".
Yeah.
Like,
Wolverine's supposed to be like...
It's like 5-something, 5'7".
5 foot. Yeah. No,
he's 5'2" is his actual height.
I think it's like 5'1", 5'2".
Finding a real human being, I'm like, somebody that's...
His name is Bob Hoskins.
I don't know who this is.
Bob Hoskins was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He was the detective that was working with Roger.
The chubby guy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm just... so, like, yes. Is he a little... Is he not buff? No, he's not buff. But...
How old
somebody
is he now?
did... he's too old now.
Yeah, I was going to say,
But somebody did... I think it was Boss Logic, did a piece of art with Bob Hoskins playing Wolverine's cigar in his mouth, crazy hair. It was perfect. I was just like, God, that would be amazing.
Dude, I saw one that they did of Zac Efron as Wolverine, and I was like, done. I'm in.
I think he's still a little too tall, though.
He is. So he's like my height. He's 5'10".
The problem with Wolverine is when Wolverine is standing in front of other characters, he should literally have to look up to lock their gaze.
That's where you do some forced perspective and you bust out your Hobbit camera.
Tom Hardy is not that tall, but they made him look as tall as Christian Bale when he was in Dark Knight Rises.
I think they're close to the same height. Christian Bale's little too. He's like
but Christian Bale's a little
5'9".
taller, and they wanted Bane to look more imposing, so there was a lot of forced perspective in there where they showed him in the background, making him look more imposing.
Okay.
Yeah. But plus he wore lifts on his shoes. Tom Hardy is a guy that's been floated as a
so
good
is Daniel Radcliffe.
A good guy who to play Wolverine. Daniel Radcliffe has shot that down. He's like, I never want to sign a contract again to keep me going for 10 movies. I'm not doing that anymore.
Fuck, dude, I would if somebody came to my door right now and was like, Chris, do you want to be this character in this silly Marvel movie? And, it's for an undisclosed amount of time. We're probably going to drop you at some point in time or you're going to get cancer. I'd be like, done. Let's go. Where do I sign up?
Yeah, but he spent the formative years of his life locked into a contract to play Harry Potter, so I understand his perspective on it.
Right, he's a baby. He was a baby, and
I do understand his perspective on it. Yeah.
No, that would be rough.
Yeah.
With that being said, fuck, man.
But Boss Logic also did art of Hardy as Wolverine. And
and it looks cool as shit.
I think he'd be good. Yeah, I really do.
Either one, they would both be... Baby's pissed. They could both be good choices. I just got my heart set on Efron. Now it looks like he's going to be the Human Torch.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, there's been a lot of rumors flying around. I don't believe anything until I hear it from Kevin Feige at this point.
I mean, I said that, and I said that, and I said that, and then all of a sudden, the guy that everybody was saying was Mr. Fantastic shows up, and he's Mr. fucking Fantastic.
That was fan service, and Kevin Feige even admitted that. He was like, that was just fan service because you guys wanted it to happen, so we did it because we're in the multiverse. It doesn't really matter.
Well, you shut the fuck up and you do that all the time because it was good.
I don't think Krasinski is going to be coming back to play MCU Reed. I think they're going to skew younger with MCU Reed. I think
I'm sure they will have him in his 30s.
Especially because if you skew younger with Reed, you skew even younger with Johnny, and you can have the Human Torch Spider-Man friendship that we never got to see in the movie because they're best friends. They're in the comics. They're best friends. Johnny and Peter, best friends.
It's true. It's true. That would be a really interesting one.
Yeah.
I like seeing that dynamic.
Yeah.
But I digress. Yeah. So number 3, Scarlet Spider, Volume 2 for me.
All right. So number 2 for me?
Number 2.
So I said there are 2 classic comics on my list.
Ooh.
And while this is not a classic comic insofar as it was written in the 80s, it was written in 2000, which is 22 years ago at this point.
You're going to say League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
No, because that predates that as well.
Okay.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was 89,
Was
90.
it that early?
Yeah.
I thought it was
pretty far back, but he continued writing stories about it, so it went through the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where I was confused.
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man?
No, Peter Ultimate Spider-Man. I love Miles, don't get me wrong. The original Ultimate Spider-Man run that Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley did
is so good.
Consistently one of the best comics I've ever read.
So fucking good.
And I don't even like Spider-Man. Right? I mean, I like Spider-Man, right?
Good series, though.
I don't read Spider-Man. Like, I don't read Amazing. The only time I tend to read Spider-Man is when
there's a crossover or something.
It's different.
Yeah.
So, like, when Superior Spider-Man was happening, I was all about that. That was a great book. I don't know. I just, the normal, like, adult Peter is just kind of bland to me, and I'm not really into it. But the reason Ultimate Spider-Man resonated with me is because he was young. We're showing you a kid in high school who's having to balance his life as a high school student with his life as being a superhero. And aside from Todd McFarlane, the Bendis and Bagley are the longest running creative team on a single comic book consecutively. Because Todd McFarlane has the record for longest writing on Spawn.
Right.
Because Spawn's
it's his
200 and something issues at this point. But the original Ultimate Spider-Man series went to 131. 131 was the final issue of that book. They relaunched it shortly after that.
Yeah, I was going to say they relaunched it shortly thereafter.
131 was the final issue of that book. And while there was a short time in the early hundreds where Mark Bagley was not drawing it, he did come back at the end to draw the finale of the story. So they went over 100 issues with that same creative team. So that is from the Marvel side, that is a record.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, for longest running single creative team.
Well, because McFarlane stepped away from Spawn for a minute there at issue 200.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is he still not doing it?
No, he's back again.
I was going to say,
he's launched a bunch of new titles now. There's King
say,
Spawn and Scorched and Gunslinger Spawn.
Yeah, I follow him on Instagram and stuff, and I'm like, dude, you still fucking do Spawn? I thought you were done with Spawn. What happened?
He, I guess, realized that was a cash
baby.
cow. Yeah. But Ultimate Spider-Man, there's not a bad issue of that book.
It's really good.
I mean, every issue of that book was so good. I mean, everything from even the goofy things where like they did that story where Wolverine and Spider-Man swapped brains,
right?
Like a Freaky Friday thing. Even that was great in how it was written and how it was presented to us. It was goofy, but it was fun.
Bendis has an ability to do some really fucking cool stuff.
Yeah.
Like some really cool stuff, and it shouldn't be cool. Like that's I'll give him that. Some of the stuff that he's done, I was like,
and getting to redesign characters, getting to do Goblin, right? As an actual monstrous Hulk style transformation, getting to do Electro in a more modern way, where his costume didn't look silly as hell.
Right.
His take on Kingpin was fucking brilliant.
It was badass.
Kingpin and the Enforcers. I mean, God, that was so good. His Doc Ock. And they did something that the Marvel Cinematic Universe would come to emulate later, where a single event spawned everything about this world. Otto becoming Dr. Octavius, Peter becoming Spider-Man, Norman becoming the Goblin, Electro. All of this spawned from the experiment, the Oz experiment that Norman performed on himself. Right? So the MCU would later come to emulate that with Tony. I mean, look at all the Spider-Man stuff. Tony is responsible for Spider-Man's villains. Like, absolutely responsible for why they're villains and why they targeted Peter.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, we would come to emulate that later because it was just really well done.
Ultimate Spider-Man was so good.
Yeah, the ripple effect that single event in the early moments of the story had resonated throughout the entire series.
That had to have been one that was really cool to get to do 50, 60 years after that character came out. I
mean, you weren't chained to continuity.
How old was, I guess it was 45 at that point in time, right around there.
Yeah, 62 was when Spider-Man Amazing Fantasy 15 came out.
So, yeah, it was about 40, 45 years old.
Yeah.
That would have been so badass.
Yeah, I mean, you basically got to reset and tell the story the way you wanted to tell it. The Ultimate Universe, in general, had some really great storytelling because of that.
Well, that was one of the things about the Ultimate Universe, or the MCU. Everybody was like, it's the Ultimate Universe. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That conversation was being had all the time. And I'm like, I don't think so. I think
there was definitely influences. Having Nick Fury be Samuel L. Jackson was clearly influenced by the Ultimate Universe.
Of course.
Their take on Tony Stark was very much influenced by the Ultimate version of Tony Stark, with the exception of the tumor thing.
Right.
Hell, their take on Captain America was very similar. Their take on using Hulk as kind of a villainous role early on in the Avengers film came directly from the Ultimate Universe. That was the first villain they fought, was Hulk.
That was also Hulk was a necessity, like the way that they did him, because they had just lost, or they didn't lose an actor for it. They brought him on there to screen test with Ed Norton.
Yeah,
and then they were like, you're a dick. No, let's get Mark in here. So they bring him in, and they were like, we can't fucking. And he's not a good character to star in a movie typically.
Sure. I think that's about to change.
Well, of course.
I don't know if you watched She-Hulk.
Right. Are they getting him from Universal, though? Because that's
the rights revert back to Marvel next year.
No shit.
Yeah. The way the movie rights work is you have to make a movie every so often or you don't retain the rights.
Yep.
And Universal has not made a Hulk movie since 2008.
Yeah.
So literally, if they don't make a movie in the next 6 months, Marvel gets the rights to Hulk back.
Wow.
And they're obviously planning World War Hulk. I mean, if you watched She-Hulk.
I was going to say, we kind of got it a little bit. Or no, I'm thinking Planet Hulk. I'm thinking Planet Hulk.
The story that followed Planet Hulk was
World War Hulk. Yes.
But obviously it's going to play out kind of differently, because the reason World War Hulk happened in the comics was because Hulk was pissed because they shot him into space. Mm-hmm. The Illuminati shot him into space, and he came back with an army behind him to destroy the Avengers. So that's going to play out a little differently in the movies, because Hulk's not an enemy in this story. But She-Hulk, spoilers out there for anybody. I'm about to spoil something very major, so if you don't want it spoiled, turn away. She-Hulk introduced us to Scar.
Yeah.
So clearly we're building to some kind of... And the plot of She-Hulk... The fact that we're bringing back the leader for the new Captain America movie, and we're bringing back the same guy who played him in The Incredible Hulk, and the leader's whole thing was getting, or at least in the movies, the leader's whole thing was getting blood from gamma-radiated blood. He wants to create an army, whatever. So I think World War Hulk in the movies is going to take the form of Hulks are now being produced by the leader, and the good Hulks have to stop that. Similar to Armor Wars, right? Which we also are going to see on Disney Plus. Actually, no, I think they've changed that. I think it's
I think it's going to be a movie now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a movie now.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So you heard it here first. Pretty sure that's what World War Hulk is going to be. I'm calling it right now before we have any information about it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to be.
Just made this up, kind of. There's some context clues here. It could go either way.
No, I've been literally talking about this since She-Hulk ended. I'm pretty sure this is where we're going. Now, I don't know. I'm not Kevin Feige, and I'm not plugged into that world at all.
Kevin? Hey, buddy. Okay, my number 2.
Yes.
You actually mentioned is Superior Spider-Man. It's so fucking good, dude.
It's a really good story.
It's so good. And as I was gonna spoil something that's fucking 7 years old right now.
What?
At the end of it, so okay, I guess I need to start somewhere earlier. We'll get to the end. I'll fill you in first. At the end of Amazing Spider-Man, Dr. Octopus inserts his consciousness into Peter's body.
Yeah, he's dying.
He is dying.
He switches them.
He then becomes Spider-Man. And
he makes a vow to Peter in the final moments of Doc Ock's life where he says, I will be better.
Yeah, I'll be the superior Spider-Man.
Superior.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he runs off and is doing Spider-Man, and he's fucking ruthless.
He's great at it.
Badass,
Not to mention he finishes Peter's doctorate.
He does.
Because he gets really angry at the beginning of that book by not being called Dr. Parker. Yep. He's like, I'm Dr. Octavius. That is who I am, and I will not be a doctor.
Gets his doctorate.
Yeah.
Starts a company.
Parker Industries, yeah.
Dates a small person who is also a minority.
Yep.
All kinds of stuff outside of what is normal for a Spider-Man
book. That was
book.
the best thing about that book is it shattered the norms.
When it was... his fucking brutality was incredible.
Yeah.
It was incredible. He has this like Tony Stark-esque thing where he's going to start policing with these spider drones.
Well, the spider drones were twofold. Yes, they were for policing, but also they helped him balance his life with Peter Parker, which is something Peter never was able to do.
Exactly.
Right? Like I'm in the middle of a date and I got to go run off and put on my costume to do a thing.
Right back.
No, let the bots handle it.
Exactly.
The bots can handle that armored car robbery or whatever the hell it was.
He was so creative about how he was Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And you see, as the story unfolds, there's this little piece of Peter that didn't leave his head.
Yep.
And
this kind of conscience in there.
And Otto starts to realize that might be there, but Peter's still able to kind of hide in the recesses of his mind.
Subconscious, yeah.
Yes. So they go about this and they start navigating. Well, then Green Goblin shows back up. Is basically how the story ends.
With a different face.
Exactly, with a different face.
He had like
because
plastic surgery.
Norman Osborn did the face-off thing. Nick Cage, John Travolta'd it. And he shows up and is just being a total asshole like he does. And he's kicking fucking Dr. Octopus's ass.
Yeah.
And it's because he knows his game.
Well, right. And and Osborn knows Peter so well at this point that the moment they come face to face and Peter says something, Otto's like, you're not Peter.
Exactly.
He knows immediately that that's not Peter.
And the coolest shit is, and the coolest line in that story, and I teared up, this is the part that I was getting to. So fucking, you turn the page, and Otto's like, dude, you were always the superior Spider-Man. You have to do this. And it was so fucking cool.
That was my biggest problem with the book.
Oh,
I'm going to be honest with you.
That was him, like, that was his fucking arc coming to a beautiful spot, and that was him being a real hero.
It was really just public pressure and editorial pressure to get Peter back into the story.
I won't deny that. How they did it was so
graceful. The problem that I have with that is the person that he was during the Superior Spider-Man arc had developed relationships. He had started dating Anna, who was tutoring him in something. I don't remember what that's how she was introduced, though. She was tutoring him.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a little person, which was immediately the shattering of a norm that had become part of comics, right?
Because Peter Parker in general, he dates supermodels.
Superheroes date supermodels.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's fair.
That's a trope within the comics. Superheroes date supermodels. And Mary Jane was actually a supermodel.
That's why I said that.
Job.
Yes.
So shattering that norm and seeing that love can come in all shapes and sizes was beautiful. We had taken a huge step forward. To bring Peter back took 10 steps back. because we literally just put it back to exactly the way it was. He lost his company. There was no way he was going to get out of that relationship with Anna without looking like a huge douche, because Anna doesn't know that was someone else in control.
Yep.
She knows Peter. That's how he presented himself. He was Peter, right? So the story had taken huge strides in making Spider-Man a better character. And then when they brought Peter back, we just took 10 huge steps back and we said, screw all that.
I'm just looking at it different than you were, because I was like, man, that was Otto Octavius being a hero. That was fucking cool, because like you said, he had built up all these relationships. He built up this, bajillion-dollar company. Life was fucking good.
Yep.
For Pete.
And then guess what? Peter came back and screwed
fucked it
all that up.
Immediately fucked it all up. Yes. That's why Superior Spider-Man's good. But the cool thing that they did with it was the issues that they threw in after it was over, because they did those Spider-Verse 2 issues. Yes.
That explained what happened to him when he walked through the portal.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that whole story.
Well, the Spider-Verse thing
literally in the comic book took panels.
Right.
In actuality, he was gone for years.
Right.
Or months or whatever.
I think it was months, yeah.
During the Spider-Verse story.
Which was that was a cool ass story, man.
Yeah, it really was.
I own all the comics to that, and I was like all the single issues, and I was like, man, I need to get the trade for that. Pick up the trade for it, just because I'm like, I'm gonna read it again, and I don't want to fucking.
I still have a big hardcover of Spider-Verse that collected all of it.
Yeah, I thought about buying the hardcover.
I mean, it's like $100.
I was gonna say that's why
it's like the whole thing.
That's why I didn't buy it. I got the main story and trade paperback, and I was like, that's good enough.
All right.
I love the story. Don't get me wrong.
It's great, and that's the biggest problem I have with it is it's so good that there was nothing that could have come after it that was going to make it better, right? And that's what happened. It was terrible after that.
I remember being bummed out that Peter was not Spider-Man. However, I was very intrigued by Dr. Octopus Spider-Man, and that's what made Superior Spider-Man so much fucking fun.
Yeah, no, it was a great book.
So much fun.
I still have my 9.8 CGC graded copy of #1. Got that from Paul.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He never paid us.
He never paid you?
So he did the first 2 times, and then when you quit.
Oh, he just stopped paying.
Yes.
Yeah. We had a bad falling out.
Yes, you did.
We're still friends to this day, but we realized while we worked in close proximity to each other that we're both too stubborn and bullheaded to get along with each other.
That's too fun.
Because he said something to me and I reacted poorly, and then he escalated the situation, and then it became like I'm literally yelling at this man in his own house. And I quit.
His business model is fucking awesome, though.
Oh no, he's a great guy. I have nothing bad to say.
No,
about Paul.
he is a good dude.
I still suggest people sell their comics to him. If you're looking to sell your whole collection, sell it to Paul. Cloud9 Comics, man, they're great. He'd give you more money than any store's gonna, for sure.
It's true. It's true. So
#1 was hard, right? The 2 books that I got into when I first started getting into comics were Batman, obviously, and X-Men. So I wanted to put an X-Men story somewhere on the list. So I had a list, I'm not kidding you, of like 15 of what I consider to be some of the best X-Men stories ever written. Mm-hmm. And I had to whittle that down to 1. And surprisingly, upon actually reflecting, because I was at work all day, I was talking about comics, I was asking my customers about this.
I'm so glad I asked you that on Wednesday.
Yeah, you started my day with that. So that was in my head all day. How am I going to whittle down my love of this to 5 things?
Right.
And the X-Men list was the biggest. The Batman list was pretty easy. I mean, it was still a big list, but it was pretty easy to find those 2 that were just, these are great. So the X-Men list was huge, but what I came up with at the end of the day is the modern take, right? It's House and Powers of X by Jonathan Hickman, Russell Dauterman, and various other artists. But it is a beautiful story, not only because it retconned things in a way that made sense within the story that doesn't change anything about what you've read up to this point, but it told a story that completely changed the entire way we look at mutants and the X-Men. If I'm being unclear, in a great way, right? Because the story opens with the X-Men basically declaring that they're a sovereign nation. They are living on Krakoa, which, for those of you out there that are X-Men history buffs, Krakoa, yes, is from Giant Size X-Men #1 in 1975. It is a mutant island, a living, sentient mutant island that in the past was a villain. In the Giant Size X-Men from 1975 was a villain. But Xavier, Magneto, they all kind of came to an understanding with it, and they live on it now. They have declared themselves a sovereign nation. Magneto, in the opening issue, Magneto is one of my favorite X-Men characters because, again, he's very tragic.
Fucking awesome character, though.
But he has a moment where he's taking world leaders on a tour of their country,
their new nation,
and their business, and one of the things he says to them on one of the last panels on one of the last pages of the first issue is, while you slept, the world has changed. You have new gods now. So basically what this story is the mutants literally do believe that they are the next step in evolution. And when you look at the history of evolution from, Cro-Magnon man to Homo sapien, the introduction of a new subspecies almost immediately is followed by the extinction of the previous. Now, back then, it was because we were feral and we didn't understand and we feared what we didn't understand and we had to destroy it. And the X-Men have dealt with a lot of that. The humans fear them. They don't understand them and they lash out at them. But they are the next step in evolution. The planet will be theirs one day. They will outlive humanity. Absolutely, for sure, they will outlive humanity. So Krakoa is a way to say, we're going to wait it out. This is our planet. We are the next step in this human chain of evolution. And we're willing to wait it out for a few centuries while you kill each other. But after that, it's ours. We're going to keep it. We're going to take it. It's our planet. The story weaves an interconnected tale. But going into #2, we're reintroduced to Moira McTaggart. And Moira is someone we're all familiar with. She worked on Muir Island. She's a scientist, geneticist, friend to the X-Men. She dated Professor Xavier for a while.
Yep.
They have a son together, David, who is Proteus in the comics. And so what we found out that was the biggest revelation and the biggest retcon, but again, doesn't change anything that you've seen, is Moira McTaggart is herself a mutant. And her mutant ability is reincarnation. She can live her whole life, and when she dies, she will reset to the moment of her birth, essentially resetting the timeline, the entirety of the timeline, to the moment of her birth, with all the knowledge she gained in her previous life.
Oh, my God.
So, she spends early parts of her life studying mutation. At one point, she tries to cure it. That's when the Brotherhood of Mutants come and they murder her. That actually happened within the narrative. So again, these retcons didn't really change anything that you've seen before. It just adds this new layer, which was brilliant.
That's something Hickman has always done very well.
Yes.
Is his retcons are graceful.
Yeah.
And
they're seamless.
I like that about his writing.
Yeah. So she tries different things. In one life, she joined Apocalypse and tried to kill all the humans. In one, she joined Magneto to the same effect, tried to kill all the humans. But she comes to an understanding that when AI rises to the point where Nimrods are born, the mutants are extinct. That's something she learns from her lives. So she takes it upon herself because she's seen this division between them, and that's led to heartache and death and Genosha and all of these things that have been terrible. So she takes it upon herself to unite them, to say, like, look, it's one species. This petty thing that we're having between us, it needs to stop. Mutants need to be united or we're not going to survive. And so that's what she does. They create Krakoa. We have Xavier send a telepathic message to the entire... I'm getting chills just talking about
all
it.
mutants. And he's like, come
seriously.
on, this is home.
He sends a telepathic message to the entire world.
Yep.
And it was an Xavier that... Look, we know who Xavier is at this point. It was an Xavier we've never seen before. It was a man who... He starts off his little soliloquy to all the people of the earth by saying, I had a dream of peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans. But over years and years and lives, you have shown me that dream is a lie. So, together with the mutants here, we have created plants that are going to make your lives better. So we have drugs that will eliminate most diseases. We have drugs that will extend your lifespan, that will help you live a more comfortable life. But these are, in the past, we would have given these gifts to you for free. But that is not the case anymore. In exchange for these gifts, the sovereignty of mutants is recognized. All mutants that have been persecuted by humans will be given a period of amnesty to come to Krakoa and live among us. We will no longer be judged by man's laws. We will be judged by mutant laws, right? So mutants that were in prison had to be released. The United Nations ratified this. They were declared sovereign, right? This is their nation. And it's just... It does this, the Powers of X side of it does this weird time travel story where we show a far future of one of Moira's lives that is just bonkers, with humans combining their DNA with machinery and reaching an apex, and a war breaks out. But one of the things that was just so cool about the story was seeing characters like Apocalypse come to Krakoa and shake hands with Professor Xavier in peace. Sinister. All of them, Exodus, Proteus, all of these people that have been such villainous people in their lives coming together. And the Apocalypse thing had a great moment because he comes and Wolverine is the first one to approach him, which is just hilarious to look at because he's tiny and Apocalypse is giant.
Huge.
Hulk-sized character that he is. And Wolverine basically says, so all of this division, this us versus you, it ends today. If you want to be here, if you want to live among us, it has to be in peace. And Apocalypse responds with, why would I ever try to stop you? You've become everything I ever wanted you to be, my children. I'm proud of you. Because Apocalypse does see himself as the alpha.
Right.
He is the first mutant.
The original,
right.
Yes.
And Krakoa, when he gets to Krakoa, Krakoa welcomes him. Because he was there long ago. He is familiar with the island. Right? The island welcomes him like a long-lost brother coming home. It's brilliant. And they come up with their mutant laws. 3 laws that will govern their society. A mutant shall not kill a human. That is law 1. Law 2 is respect the sovereignty of this land. Because while Krakoa is allowing them to live there, it is not theirs. They do not own it. Krakoa is a living thing.
Right.
He's allowing them to claim spots there, but it's still a living thing. So respect the sovereignty of this land. And the third law is make more mutants. Basically telling everybody, get to boning. Be
fruitful and multiply.
Get to boning. We got to make more mutants. They also, combining the powers of 5 very special mutants, Hope, Proteus, Gold Balls. I know this is a weird name. And a couple of others. I don't remember all 5 of them. They call them the 5. They defeat death. The mutants find a way through mutant power and Professor Xavier's backing up of the telepathic imprints of mutants to end death. Mutants will no longer be governed by the laws that man is governed by. Even life and death. Death is no longer an impediment to them. I know that seems like something that makes the story have less impact. It does not. I mean, recently in the Avengers X-Men Eternals crossover that they did, we saw the reaches of what that can be. And it's brilliant. I mean, it is insanely amazing. Insofar as we were reading one of the issues of House of X, and at the end of the issue, literally all the main X-Men die. Just brutally dead. Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean, Nightcrawler, Iceman, Angel. They're all dead. Only to open the next issue with them being resurrected, which was the first time it had been shown to us. So you get to the end of that issue, you're like, what is happening?
You're like, no.
Killed every major character.
Those are the mainstays. We need those.
And then we resurrect them in the very next issue. It's brilliant. It is something that is beautiful. They are in the process. I mean, it's going to take years and years to get their population back to where it is, but they are in the process of resurrecting every mutant that's ever been killed.
Oh, my God.
All the mutants on Genosha that got killed by the Sentinels.
That's fucking crazy.
Literally millions of mutants died on Genosha. they're all going to come back. It's going to take years, but they're every day bringing more and more of them back. So we got to have characters come back that we hadn't seen in forever. Cyclops and Havoc's long-lost brother, Vulcan, that was like the emperor of the Shi'ar Empire for a while, is back. Jamie Braddock is back. All of these really interesting characters that had really cool arcs, they're back.
That's fucking crazy.
We get to tell new stories with them. It's fantastic.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the things that's been exciting about comics. Now, there are certain characters that I'm glad never got brought back because it made their death mean something. And Joe Perez talked about this often. He's like, original Captain Marvel or dead.
Marvel. Yeah.
Yep. He's like, won't ever come back. He's like, and he shouldn't.
He did.
Oh, he did.
Sorry to say.
Damn.
Genisvel is back. Marvel, he's back.
That's bullshit. Let people die of cancer and let us, live with their absence. God damn.
Also, he did come back for a short time during Avengers vs. X-Men.
I guess he did, didn't he?
To pass the mantle of Captain Marvel to Carol and then die again.
Yeah. Woo! Didn't really need you for that, dick.
No, but it was still a cool little moment.
It was a cute thing, whatever.
The Phoenix resurrected the entire planet. He was dead on the planet, so he was back.
Oh, okay.
And then he said, carry on. He told Carol, carry on. Keep our name alive. And then he went off to fight a big iron thing, and he died.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm dying to know. Number one.
Lock and Key.
Really?
Yes.
Are you messing with me?
I swear to God.
Really?
I mean,
that is
it's literally right down there.
That is not what I expected.
Oh, well,
I really expected your number one to be a Spider-Man story.
It's not. It's Lock and Key.
Explain.
Okay, so that was when I started working at the shop. That was the book club book.
Okay.
And I was like, is this any good? And John Perks was like, you need to read that. And
Look, I'm not going to deny you Lock and Key is good. It's just surprising.
Well, I took it home, and I'm reading it, and I watched this fucking savage attack on this family happen in the first few panels. And then I watch a little kid drop dead, but not for real. And, like, all this crazy stuff is happening, and I was so hooked in that, so I flew through that first trade. And I start going through the second trade because it was already done. I was way late to the party here.
6 volumes. I think.
It was 6 volumes, and it was short. I think it happened in like 2008, something like that, right around there. 2010. Isn't that when they did it?
Probably, yeah. I feel like it was still going on, or at least the final volume was when I started working for the company, and that was 2012.
That's probably right then.
But I think it was finishing up.
Yeah, that's probably right then. So, yeah, I see all these crazy things happen. I get totally sucked into this first book, and like this family basically going to confront the sins of their father, more or less, was kind of the whole basis for the story. And it wasn't, you learn that it's not just the sins of the father, but all of their fucking ancestors. That's what they're dealing with. And there's these like cool, cutesy cute things that happen because they're exploring the unknown in like a huge sense.
Sure. They're
literally being exposed to magic for the first time.
Yeah, there's a key that allows you to walk inside your own brain.
Right. Well, and how it's done is so brilliant. They're literally opening each other's heads up and shoving books and stuff in it. They're like, now you know, motherfucker.
Yeah.
It's so good. So I get through the first one, through the second one, through the third one, and this is like all very, very quickly. We didn't have the fourth book at the store, and I was like, John, we have to, and he's like,
need my fix, man.
He's like, let me see if one of the other stores has it. So he's calling around, we get it, and I'm like, that's not going to fucking get here till Wednesday or something. Like, what? This isn't good. So finally it shows up. This is right around Christmas time. It's Thanksgiving. It was like Thanksgiving at this point.
Okay.
I go to my mom's for Thanksgiving. I have book 6. I finish it there, and I laid my head down, and I was like, I felt so just taken back by what I had experienced in that series. Sure. I was like, this is not what comic books are, or not what they had been.
Right.
And it was so refreshing to me, and like getting all those feels out of it for the very first time.
Oh, yeah.
Loved it.
Oh, I remember my first initial reactions when I read the book.
It's so fucking good.
It's interesting, too, because it's written by Joe Hill.
Yeah, Stephen King's son.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you guys are unfamiliar, Joe Hill is Stephen King's son. Look up a picture of Joe Hill. He looks like Stephen King. It's kind of weird. He's just
almost
80s,
like they're related.
He's just 80s Stephen King. Yeah, but it's almost exact, right? It's like, do I look like my father? Yes. But there are key differences that separate us. They are the exact. He cloned himself. That's his son.
Probably.
But yeah, I would argue I like Stephen King. I've read most of his books.
Joe Hill's better.
I would argue Joe Hill is a better writer than Stephen King. Not because what Stephen King does is bad. Stephen King just oftentimes falls into the same setting,
right,
and the same characters.
He's got his thing that he does.
Towns. Joe Hill's much better at building a world, I think, than Stephen King has ever been. And Lock and Key is the best example of that.
Oh, it's fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, ever since Entertain the Geeky started, I was like, give us a show, a movie, something. So then finally 2020 comes around and we get it. And they basically did everything in season 1.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck are you guys going to do next? So they do. And like, admittedly, I didn't finish the, no, I did finish the last season. Never mind. Yeah, I did finish the last season.
I haven't watched the show at all. I don't want to watch the show.
So season 1 is good. Okay.
Netflix just has this habit of deviating too far from the source material.
Joe Hill was there for it.
I understand that, and so were the guys. So were the guys who made Avatar, but they walked away too because they're deviating from the source material.
Oh, fuck. I thought that was because they had a disagreement with their Dragon Prince show.
No. They were going to be part of that live action Netflix.
Yeah, no.
Avatar Last Airbender story, and they walked away because they wanted to deviate too far from what the creators wanted it to be.
I wonder what that is.
The Witcher is another example. This just happened this week.
Yeah.
Right? Henry Cavill is leaving and not going to play Geralt of Rivia anymore, and Liam Hemsworth is going to play Geralt now. First of all, that was when I heard that, I was just like, you picked the wrong Hemsworth, first of all. If you want to find somebody that's comparable to Henry Cavill, you got to go with Chris.
I don't know, man.
Liam's not one of the buff Hemsworths, you know?
I think he will be just fine in that department. He's a big, good-looking dude.
Yeah, but Cavill is just...
Cavill is Superman.
He's tall, so is so is Chris. Like, they just have the same body type, where it's real heavy up here.
But they carry themselves so different. I don't think...
Well, sure, I'm not saying Chris Hemsworth should play the character.
I was going to say, I don't think Chris
Hemsworth... What
I'm
saying is, if you're going to go with a Hemsworth, you picked the wrong one.
I think it'll be okay.
I don't. I'm not going to watch anymore.
Well, I thought how Henry Cavill handled it was fucking brilliant.
Henry Cavill, but as we've started hearing him talk about it, and we've started hearing news about what's going on behind the scenes, he's a fan of the books. He's a fan of the video games.
Yeah.
He likes the story that they told. And we've heard this from the very beginning. Henry Cavill has been the voice of, no, that's not right. It should be like this. Throughout the entire, keeping us grounded within the narrative that's already been established. And Netflix, again, wants to deviate from that, which ultimately they won that argument, and he's out.
Yeah, well, I mean, see, for now, like, he wasn't Superman either anymore.
Yeah, he's Superman again now, though.
Yeah, now he is, and he's like, I'm going to go fucking talk to James Gunn because James Gunn is DC.
Okay, but here's the thing, right? Why make the announcement that you've recast the character if there was a chance you're not going to recast the character?
To stir up the media.
Because we never made any announcements about a new Superman.
No, but
we've been left in limbo about who was going to play Superman, and now Cavill's back.
We knew he wouldn't be Superman, is basically what was alluded to.
No, we didn't.
He had basically said, I'm probably not going to be doing it anymore.
Probably is not definitively.
Fair enough, fair enough.
But DC and Warner Brothers never actually made a definitive statement about it because they weren't sure. It was up in the air. Also, if you watch Peacemaker, they clearly, like the person who's in the background that's silhouetted is clearly Henry Cavill's body style in the Superman costume.
Well, you mean Superman? His body style is fucking Superman.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, when they put him in the background shaded, that was clearly supposed to be Henry Cavill. Because they weren't sure. So they never made a definitive statement. Netflix has come out and said, Cavill's out, Hemsworth is in.
Yeah, well, I think when they get their fucking petition from everybody... See, this is where we as fans are weak. Let me explain. If you don't like a decision that somebody like your Netflix or something like that makes, you can cancel the subscription.
Oh, I like plenty of things on Netflix. I'm just not going to watch Witcher anymore.
Sure, and that's fair. Let it get canceled that way. I go a little harder than that, so I canceled Disney Plus for like 2 years.
Why? What was the straw that broke your back there?
Yes, I will explain. So when they fired the Cara Dune lady, I was like, dude, she was fucking posting shit on social media. Who cares? Who cares? I'm not gonna do a whole discussion on what she was saying or anything like that. My whole thing was, I'm like, I felt like that was an attack on free speech. That was how I looked at it personally.
Sure.
So I didn't pay for it for 2 years. I got it free for a year when I bought a fight on ESPN.
All right.
So I was like, all right. And I called my buddy because I had been stealing his for the past year. And I was like, buddy, hey.
Well, so here's my thing about Cara Dune, right?
Yeah, shoot.
Was it detrimental to the series to get rid of her? No.
No, and that wasn't my issue, though. I was like, if a company is going to take a stance that you can't voice your opinion, I'm like, I don't want to give that company my money. I didn't pay to see a Marvel movie in that time. I didn't wear any fucking Marvel shirts.
I understand what you're saying. I also think there is lines. When you work for Disney, you have to maintain a certain caliber of character.
Well,
they expect that.
I would argue,
and I would argue that it's in your contract.
I would argue
when Tom Holland was at the children's hospital dressed as Spider-Man, that was part of his contract.
When
outreach.
Yeah, so the part that I would argue there is I don't believe it is you have to maintain a certain level of image. You have to maintain whatever the company's beliefs are as a whole at that point in time, which is typically true of a show or a movie.
But what we don't know is if that maintaining of, because what we've heard of some of the people that have worked for Marvel is like, no, it's in your contract that you have to maintain a certain image while you're under contract to them.
Sure.
You agree to say, I'm going to be this person. Right?
That's fucking...
And that is, but what your argument was is that it's censoring free speech. If you signed a contract...
You already gave it away.
You literally violated that contract, which means they fired you for violating the contract, not because of what you said.
Would you?
But it's a line, man.
I hear what you're saying here.
On this side of it, I agree with you. We should be able to say whatever we want to say. On this side of it, it's a business, and they have to maintain a certain image, and I'm sure they expect that of their. In fact, I'm not even sure. Stars have told us that those things are in their contracts.
My issue with the Disney image is it changes pretty rapidly. A few years ago, when Gravity Falls came out, for example, they didn't want a gay character in the show, an openly gay character. They actually told Alex Hirsch he can't be this gay. That was a few years ago. Now they're like, hey, you got to put more gay characters in it. I'm like, guys, why don't you just let these people be creative and make their art?
Because I think...
And shut the fuck up.
Because I think that...
Let creators create.
I agree. But I think that public perception of these things changes over time. And the onus is on companies, corporations, and media companies to keep up with that.
See, and I think the onus is on us to keep up with it, not on them. I don't give a shit what Disney thinks about anything.
Yeah, but I think, but here's an example, right? I've said this many times. I think I've said this in an episode of the show. Everyone, I don't care what your race, sexual orientation, how you identify, everyone should be able to go to a movie and see themselves. Be able to watch a show and see themselves.
Sure.
Which means...
Said that on the last episode.
Those things that we create have to run the gamut across all spectrums. I don't think they feel that they have to do that. I think it's what is right to do.
I hear what you're saying here. And this is where I would call on an individual to look at what unites us and not what makes us the same. I can look at any person, regardless of where they are, where they came from, or anything like that, and see things in them to admire and see that in myself. And that's just being, that's just having, I think, a pretty basic level of perception.
I think there's several people, and I'm not even just talking about recently, right? History has shown us that that's not true. There are some people that have been so oppressed by society that it's impossible for them to sit there and watch their oppressor and relate to him.
They can't see themselves in something admirable?
Not when that something represents the oppression they've dealt with.
I see.
You know what I mean? There's a reason Black Panther needs to be up there.
Not a black guy.
I'm not either, but I would argue.
Fucking love Black Panther.
I do too. I'm not a black guy, but I would argue that were I, it would kind of be hard for me to relate to the symbol of America, the white man. I'm just saying. When what you see in that is what has oppressed you, how do you relate to your oppressor?
I hear what you're saying there, and the thing that I would argue in that is that you see somebody trying to do good and better, and that's the part that you look at. Like,
look, I'm not saying Captain America is a racist.
Right.
He's not.
I get that.
Captain America respects all beings and life and whatever you want to be, but
he is all that is America.
We cannot see the perspective that they have.
No,
we will never be able to see it, so we will never understand what it is to look at the symbols of oppression up on the screen.
Sure.
Because we're white. We're white guys. We can't think in that way. And I'm not saying that that
we were slave owners and we were these awful
right, exactly.
people.
I'm not saying we're horrible people. I'm just saying we can't relate to it in the same way.
Sure.
I don't know what the black guy sees when he's watching Captain America or Iron Man. I know what I see, but I don't know what he sees. Gotcha. I don't know what the gay person sees when he's watching Black Panther.
Sure.
I don't know. But I do think that everybody deserves to have characters that represent them. Their lives, their interests.
And I think that's the thing that makes characters in and of themselves interesting, is that they come from different walks of life and things like that. So that's what makes them enticing to me as a reader.
Yeah. Well, I think to kind of wrap it all up,
right,
the comic industry as a whole, right, these stories that we've sat here and talked about for an hour here have definitely influenced who I think we've become in our lives. How we look at the world, how we relate to other people within our orbit has definitely been influenced by this. And I would argue more people should be into this hobby because it's good to look at other perspectives. It really is.
How do we not end on that?
Well,